Hey everyone, it's Evangeline here at eTrailer. Today we have the Benton Hanging Bike Rack, otherwise called the ShiftShow, and we'll see how it fits here on our 2020 Chrysler Pacifica. This is a 4-bike hanging rack that is not only very affordable to make it accessible to a lot of people, but is also very functional. So if you have your Pacifica filled up with your friends, your family, you all want to go for a bike ride, this is going to be a very easy way to do so without having to deal with a super large platform rack. Plus, this is going to be one of the very few bike racks where you can tilt the rack away with the bikes on if you needed access into your hatch. I really only recommend operating this feature if you have at least a second person to help you out, or if you're pretty comfortable in your bike carrying skills. Because when you pull this knob here and you let the rack drop to the ground, you don't want to get hit by multiple bikes coming down. So really that knob is better operated up against the vehicle and then have a second person help you out here at the end. Now what will happen is when you usually have like a second bike on there, the wheels will hit the ground, which is fine, but it might not get the full tilt away if that happens. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna manually open up the door so you can see that clearance between the door and our bike rack. Plenty of space, so now we can get in there, maybe grab our strollers if we want to, our helmets, our backpacks, all without having to take the bikes off. Very convenient, especially once you have multiple bikes loaded. If you need quick and easy access into your hatch, you don't have to worry too much about it. Remember to be careful when lifting the rack up into place. You want to put more of your weight on that rack and not so much on the bikes. Now, let's talk about what types of bikes you can carry on this rack. You do have a 40-pound weight capacity per bike, which is slightly more than the average weight capacity for a hanging rack. You also have a single arm, which makes it a little bit easier to carry around different bikes of different shapes and sizes. Now, if you do have a mountain bike or a step-through bike, I highly recommend getting a frame adapter bar. That way you have a more level experience when loading up your bikes. You are going to have 3 touch points though. So 1 and 2 are going to be up top. You're going to have these rubber pads that hold down. And the third is going to be here for your tube. And this is going to help prevent the sway of the bike as you go around. When you want to take your bikes off, you press those levers and you lift those straps up and out of the way. And this is what it's going to look like trying to maneuver the bike through that arm. For most racks that have 2 arms, it's going to be pretty much of a hassle. It's a little bit of a hassle, but much easier, only have to maneuver around 1 arm. And just like that, we're now ready to hit the trails. If you are driving around without bikes on your rack, I do recommend putting away the straps. That way they're not flopping around as you drive around. You can also fold the arms down to be more compact when you're driving around like that. But before we do that, we are going to take some measurements so you can see the difference that it would make. When you have this in the out position, and if you measure from the bumper of your Pacifica to the end of the rack, this is going to sit at 41 inches. So a good amount of space behind your kind of larger vehicle, but so much less compared to if you had a platform rack. Now, bringing this back down, we're going to pull this knob over here, and then we're just going to let those arms drop down. See how nicely it folds up against itself? This is going to be the compact or portable position. So measuring again from the bumper, this time to the end of the rack by those cradles, it's now 15.5 inches. Big difference compared to when it was folded up. This is going to be how you're going to drive around town. And again, this can still tilt away with it in this position if you needed to put away groceries or grab a stroller. This makes it a lot easier to maneuver, and you can just leave this on the car during the long term. This is also what it's going to look like for all the vehicles and people behind you. Doesn't take up much room. There's a lot of visibility here. Obviously, taillights and window are very visible. Technically, it does cover up your license plate, and your backup camera, which is centered, is directly behind the bike rack. So what's going to happen is you're going to have a very limited view out of your rear view camera. So you would have to rely on your rear window as well as your side mirrors to drive around. Another perk to this rack is that it also folds up very compact, so you can store it in the corner of your garage or even on a shelf. Check out my first impressions of this bike rack here on our product page if you want to see that in action. But for here on our Pacifica, I can really see how it would be helpful for this vehicle, especially since you are driving around a minivan. It is a little bit more likely for you to have more people with you, which means if we all want to go for a bike ride, this makes that possible without taking up too much space. Now, I'm not the hugest fan of hanging racks in general though, so I do recommend taking a look at the Benton Shifts and Grins platform rack. Yes, it's going to be a lot heavier and a little bit pricier, but that also is going to create a more stable platform for your bikes compared to when the bikes are on here hanging and potentially swaying into each other. But really, if you have garage bikes or just bikes that you're perfectly fine with driving around, toss it onto the rack, you just need to get them from point A to point B, this is going to really do that for you. Now, this was a look at the Benton ShiftShow hanging rack for 4 bikes, and you saw it on the 2020 Chrysler Pacifica.